Okay, welcome to the Near Memo episode 4, I believe. This is our weekly conversation with me, Greg Sterling, Mike Blumenthal, and David Mim about search, social, commerce, and everything that's going on in the world of the local internet. And so welcome to you guys again.
Thanks. Mike, you missed the memo on the black hoodie uniform today.
I did. We're going to have to get, as you said, we're going to have to get some swag that includes black hoodies.
That's right.
Black hoodies are not quite my style. Although I'm adaptable, I might be able to find it.
See, if you were living on the West Coast now, rather than cross country skiing, you'd be surfing. So it would be appropriate.
I'd also have a ponytail, so you know.
I'm heading there. I'm telling you. All right. So we as always we pick 3 stories of the week that we found interesting or compelling for one reason or another, and we dive into them. And I'll lead off with the Facebook personalized ads news. They released a campaign, a commercial, and a campaign celebrating. I forget what the formal title of it.
Good ideas deserve to be found.
Yes, good ideas deserve to be found. Thank you. And they were promoting the value of personalized ads to small business, calling them and their Facebook tools in general a lifeline for small business during the pandemic. And my initial reaction, I was on the call that they did before they formally released it. And my initial reaction was one of just intense cynicism. Right. This is Facebook trying to a PR ploy to combat what Apple is doing and hiding behind small business and trying to present themselves as the champion of small business. And it's just very hard not to receive this news without incredible skepticism. But I feel like the people working on these projects, the small business employees at Facebook, are really sincere in their desire to help small business and do take their what I would call ethical obligations to these people very seriously. So there's a kind of weird dichotomy or contradiction between the corporate kind of messaging and what the motives of the corporation are, and then the individuals who are actually carrying this stuff out.
And there is a disconnect with their PR on this as well. This article at their blog basically creates this false moral dichotomy between privacy of everybody in the world against consumers being able to find yoga places that with goats. I mean, it's such a reprehensible piece of propaganda that it makes me gag. I mean, I think that marketers have managed to give themselves a bad name. They look good compared to whoever wrote this piece of content. I mean, this content, whoever wrote it falls right into that cynical category. I mean, this just doesn't, it rings so hollow and it creates such a false narrative that I have trouble even reading it without gagging.
I would be curious to know the percentage of Facebook small business advertisers who are using personalization at all in their ads. My experience working with SMBs, it's limited the last 4 or 5 years as I've had other projects, helping them with Facebook ads. There may be people that know how to boost a post, but I don't see many SMBs running a really narrowly targeted personalized ad campaign on Facebook. I think the reality is it's professional marketers, largely at enterprise corporations, who are taking advantage of the micro targeting that Facebook enables. So
I think that's a very valid point. I mean, I would say that they define personalized ads as any kind of targeting, right, to any subgroup within Facebook. So not necessarily the Cambridge Analytica style micro targeting, but I think it's a point well taken. Mike, you were going to say something.
Well, given that Facebook has such a large first-party ecosystem, they still will be able to do a very high level of personalization within their ecosystem. They just won't be able to scrape the rest of the web to do so. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, this is really about the audience network, and within the sort of first-party universe on its apps and its site, they're not going to be impacted by this. So, in a way, maybe these are crocodile tears a little bit. I mean, they sort of came out and said, well, 50% of our audience network revenue is going to be impacted by this, but there's some skepticism about how real the financial impact will be. Now, it's interesting, Dan Levy, whom I haven't talked to in a long time, who's a good guy, who's now, he was running small business, and now I think he's running ads. I'm not sure what his formal title is, but he wrote a post that said Apple's motivated by, profit, essentially, in doing this privacy initiative. And I agree that Apple is marketing privacy as a differentiator versus Android. But that's like a Trumpian projection on Facebook's part. Like, Apple's motivated by profit, so they're doing this thing. No, it's really Facebook who is primarily motivated by profit and is championing small business. But really, it's about their the bottom line for them. One final note, there was a question asked of one of the small businesses. They had two small businesses on this press call, and one of the questions asked was, hey, do you even need a website anymore? This is a journalist asking this question. Do you need a website anymore when you got Facebook? And it was almost like the PR people teed that up, but I don't think they did. And the woman who ran she had it was a African inspired lifestyle business, and then they made I think handbags with a charitable aspect. And she said she essentially affirmed that you didn't. And I go back to what you guys and others have said historically, which is you really can't trust these giant platforms to have your interests at heart, and you have to maintain your own assets, because they're going to make a change, and it may be very disadvantageous.
And
right.
you
I
have
think, the three of us were laughing, but the reality is 95% of business owners who are just getting started, I guarantee you they're creating a Facebook page before they're creating a
absolutely
website.
Absolutely,
That's the mindset. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that makes a certain amount of sense from where their audience is, but at the same time, it's not in their long-term interest to rely entirely on those things.
I don't think it's in their short-term interest either. As my case study showed, just creating a Google-owned website
Right.
generated significantly more new incoming leads. So there's that issue. And then the other issue is ultimately you need to own not just your website, but your customers. And the only way to do that is not continue to rent them from Facebook or Google.
So final point on that, the newsletter coming out today, which hasn't published yet, I didn't expand upon it, but it's a link to a story by Adzuma, which partnered with Cambridge University in the UK to do a study about the efficacy of Bing, Google, and Facebook. And they said their conclusion, whether you believe it or not, was that Facebook was the most cost-effective marketing channel for small businesses. That was their conclusion.
And I would agree if you're doing ads, but I think beyond ads, then I don't think that's
this was ads. This was limited to ads. So David,
right.
why don't you talk about your item?
Sure. I'm not even sure if we covered this in the Near Media Daily.
We did not. We did not.
I was fascinated. Mike tipped me off to the new product that Hey.com launched this week. Jason Fried, the founder or co-founder of Hey and also co-founder of Basecamp, has incubated a really interesting newsletter product, which is essentially sending a newsletter to a world@hey.com address, just sending an email, and anyone who has subscribed to hear from you in the Hey network will get that message delivered through world@hey.com, sort of it's almost like a personalized alias. And Mike, I thought, well, first of all, I just thought it's a brilliant product idea. I love the simplicity of it. I love the sort of, the personalized nature, the ease of generating personalized content to be published to a wider audience. So I loved all those things. And Mike, I thought your comment that it was sort of the full-on devolution of the newsletter or of publishing generally. I think it's a really radical idea, and whether or not it succeeds, I think it certainly has gotten my wheels turning about how to just radically simplify everything that I'm working on with product for for demand science and tidings and everything else we're doing. So.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I see regularly is that the overwhelming complexity imposed by the technical requirements of Google and a website and Facebook and understanding the ins and outs of these platforms creates a vast opening for an effective, super simple, straightforward mechanism. And I was intrigued by it as well. And I think that most small businesses, if they could achieve success with that simplified world, would jump on it in a flash.
I think it's not just small businesses. I think enterprises too. I mean, maybe not this particular product, but the notion of simplification is really important. I mean, I'm living in a world of multiple SaaS products that are hard to use and don't integrate and confusing to, there's a learning curve. People adopt and abandon them. I mean, simplicity is really important for enterprises.
Yeah, we've seen at Gather Up that the API, the idea that you could share with any app on the web, becomes a gateway, and people start charging for API access and all kinds of silly rules to create, or expense to create integration. I get there may be some security issues, but for the most part, the APIs that are out there, which could theoretically create this interconnected world, have been distorted and perverted to create a fragmented world, and it's very frustrating.
Okay, so one thing that was triggered in my brain that I want to slip in here that we'll talk about maybe another time is just Twitter announced the subscription product, and it's just more and more and more of these pay to access content, pay to talk to your favorite celebrity or whomever. I mean, there's more and more of these showing up, and I just think it's a really interesting development as an alternative to monetization, alternative to advertising.
So is it time for a survey? Should we ask the people listening to us if they're willing to pay to listen to us?
Not quite yet, but
Okay.
Sure.
or not listen to us. If the case may be.
Yeah, pay to avoid the content.
Pay to mute one of these panel members.
Okay.
All right,
so, Mike, you're up.
You're up.
Great.
At number 3.
So this is a story. I don't normally read Variety, but I came across in my feed today, and I thought it was fascinating that Walmart is creating a series of video interactive cooking shows using celebrities like Patti LaBelle. And as part of the show, the users can then, with a click of a button, order the ingredients to the recipe at their local Walmart. And so it's fascinating to me, one, that Walmart, it's a very innovative sort of use of the technologies. They noted that the click-through, the conversion rate was as high as 8%, which is very high. And it's a classic example of online, offline, but using sort of, as you mentioned, QVC-like sort of environment, which is incredibly targeted to entertaining to generate sales in a local environment. What are your thoughts?
I haven't experienced it. I saw the story. I haven't experienced it. I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's a great branding vehicle also, in addition to a kind of commerce tool. And as you pointed out, sort of when we were prepping a little bit here, Walmart is doing a lot of stuff, a lot of very innovative things, sort of on the back end, with the supply chain, but also with marketing and using their stores to sort of support their e-commerce efforts. So I think it's really very, very interesting, and it's kind of an opportunity for some small businesses maybe down the line to emulate something like this. I mean, there's no capability, there's no fulfillment capability on the small business side, but I think this is something that small businesses could also.
Absolutely, it seems fairly trivial to set up a bundle in Shopify, right? With this, if you're a food vendor, and here's the 6 ingredients that are used in this recipe. Click the button and send them to you. Right.
That would be an e-commerce model, which would be super interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be. Shopify is another really interesting story that we haven't really talked about a lot, but don't want to get us off track.
we have plenty of near memos coming up.
So, Mike, why do you not usually? What caused you to read Variety in this particular instance?
It just the article was titled. It came through one of my feeds, and as related to local, I'm on a number of RSS feeds.
Yeah.
And I just thought the article spoke to me. I follow Walmart. My son-in-law works there, and I find, like you, that despite their terrible reputation as a exploiter of people, they have been very innovative in this sort of online offline world and have been leveraging their assets. And I've tracked their robotics move, which was a recent robotics move, which is interesting. I track them in the news quite regularly. So I think they're a company to be reckoned with. I think in the end, we're going to see a massive consolidation of commodity retail around Amazon and Walmart, because they're the two companies that are most able to control all elements of buying, transporting, and selling.
And I think there's still this passionate fan base of Costco loyalists, which I think they're, slightly different model, obviously, but I think that they're forced. And I also think Target does a great job with customer experience typically.
Well, I think there are a handful. I mean, I think the point about consolidation is exactly right. There are a handful of key retailers that are going to control everything. And there'll be a number of omni-channel retailers that have stores and use stores very effectively. And then, everybody else is going to be dependent upon them, either from a distribution, these e-marketplaces, and then these big physical stores. Sephora is opening a whole bunch of stores in contrast to other retailers, but doing a lot of store within a store kind of. They have a partnership with Kohl's. They used to have a partnership with JCPenney. I think that's an interesting model where a lot of brands will kind of open these store within store environments to kind of hedge against some of the cost and risk of having their own stores, or
Right. And COVID has accelerated this. The real estate issues are tied into this, the commercial real estate issues, the consolidation of malls, and the loss of local brands at scale, the Sears of the world, Kmart's. We're in a period for the next 10 years of consolidation. Where it ends up, David, I agree. There may be 8 players or 10 players, but it's going to be a dramatically reduced, particularly around commodity products. And then I think there will be room for higher end products and niche products and value added products.
I think that's a key point. I think I'm bullish on, and I don't own a ton of shares, but I own shares in both Amazon and Shopify. I think that there's a place for long tail e-commerce for SMBs, just like I think that the CPG brands, Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble and those kind of companies, those are the ones that are, I think, maybe most at risk from this consolidation. I actually think that there's still going to be plenty of room for long tail players. So.
Well, one interesting question maybe for us to think about is whether the future of small business retail is dominated by e-commerce, because it just becomes really hard for them to compete in a physical retail world.
I think it has to be. I think small business showrooming, sort of like the Bonobos model, is really where I see things heading. I think space is getting more expensive in urban markets. Well, this COVID, may be accepted, but generally speaking, retail space is at a premium, at least here in Portland. And you need a small footprint, but you need to be able to, deliver products both in person and through e-commerce. So
I saw an interesting model when I was in Albuquerque when I was able to travel, and it was a mashup. It was a small game company that sold games, but rented space table so you could play all the games, and served desserts and tea and coffees.
So a cafe style.
It was a cafe style with big open Apple-like tables where the waiters would come over and explain to you the game rules for some game that you could then play with the 6 people you brought in. And when you were done, you could buy that game off the shelf. So it was a very interesting mashup that I think small retailers need to move to that sort of value add level.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, more to say, but on that note, I think we're at the end of episode 4, and we we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Sounds great. Good to see you guys.